Accessing Secure Channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching and the Agent Files. And this week's mission, and it's an exciting one, is for those rookie realtors to actually have their license activated. And that's a big deal, right? A very big deal. It's also potentially somewhat overwhelming and maybe a little scary in an exciting way. And it should give you some energy. It should give you some reason to maybe pause and to think, well, as to what the heck did I get myself into? That's certainly a very common and very natural reaction, to be frank with you. So we are here to help you with that and help you through all of these mysteries and these not so secrets. I suppose they're public secrets in the sense that a lot of this stuff doesn't get talked about until you're actually licensed. Yes, we touch on some of these things in the other programs, but for the most part, this really is going to now give you some real structure and some real cadence, I suppose, as to how to best kind of formulate where your practice is going and how that's going to look and what that's going to look like. And the overwhelm part, which is actually one of the things that many agents get stuck with, is the sense that they are always trying to chase something, and in many cases are chasing things that they're actually not working on, that is not actually relevant in the moment. And what I mean by that is there's this kind of sense of, and this need by a lot of people. So if you're dealing with this, you're certainly not going to be the only one, that feel that they have to know everything before they can actually go out and talk to people. That's never going to happen. I'm just going to tell you point blank, you're never going to know it all. Okay, there is no point in your life, and I've been doing this for 40 years, so I still can honestly say I don't know it all, and frankly, I don't need to know it all. And if you ask a lawyer, if you ask a notary, if you ask a doctor, a surgeon, an engineer, an architect, they will say the same thing. They will never know it all. Now, over time, of course, your built-in library of hands-on skills and practical recourse and resources to have instant access to some of the answers that people maybe seek maybe faster because of experience and being in the business and in the field more. Yes, that's going to happen, but that's okay. But even those people, the smart ones at least, will oftentimes say, time out. I need to check this. I need to verify this. If you go to a lawyer, one of the first things they'll say is, okay, tell me your issue, tell me your challenge, tell me this, that, or whatever. And then they'll tell you to go away because they won't actually give you answers. Why? Maybe they have the answers, but they're going to check. Why are they going to check? Because they can't afford to make a stupid mistake by making an assumption that they should make, right? And in this business, our real estate business, we're rapidly moving in a direction where, a mistake can be very costly, not just for you, but also for your clients. And that's a big deal, of course. And again, I don't mean this from a fear perspective, but I really genuinely mean this from you doing the best possible job for your clients all the time. Then you got to make sure that whatever it is that you say, whatever it is that you do, is founded in fact, is founded in reality, and not in fiction, not in, the hype of the moment. Okay, that's why it's so important. So this is one of those key moments in your business and in your real estate practice, where one of the key parts that we're gonna work on is in fact your identity, like who you want to be when you grow up in real estate, so to speak. So we're gonna work on that in a little bit later. But so in this episode, that's actually one of the things that should be your takeaway: is that who are you and how do you want to represent yourself in this business to your target audience, to your consumers? How do they want to know you, right? As what? And it's an important step actually. And again, in previous sections in the almost agent and the aspiring agent, we talk so much about making sure that you have yourself a business plan, and we call it a business plan. The better definition may in fact be a life plan, right? This is how do you see your business and your life evolve in real estate and outside of real estate, so that you can look at it once you're done with it, once you've achieved all of your objectives, and say, that was a business well run, that was a life well lived, right? And if you can look at it that way and then start implementing the activities, the tasks, the roles, the business model, the personal life objectives in such a way that they are consistent with that business plan, that life plan, then you can look back and be quite proud. But you can also be very on point now, even now, today, even though that you haven't done 2 steps in the business of real estate quite yet, but you can be on point to be on track to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. And you can weed out all the stuff that you don't necessarily have to focus on until it's important, right? Because I guess one of the biggest pressures on your life going forward is going to be the commitment on your time. And again, you're going to hear a lot of these things in various different ways going forward, but it's really important to remind yourself once in a while is, do I need this right now? Is this consistent with where I'm going with my business? Do I have to know this? Do I have to do this? Do I have to have this for me to be consistent with my larger business plan? And if the answer is yes, then okay, go for it. If not, then maybe you need to reprioritize it for a later day and keep going back to this is the path, this is the model, this is the next step that is logical, sequential, is important in my current set of activities to generate and promote my business, my life, my balance, my ultimate long-term goals. Okay, that's why we set that out, because, and I'll give you a bit of an inkling as to why that is so important. For example, if you decided that you wanted to, for the sake of argument, say that you wanted to build your business based out of business to business referrals and interactions and relationships. Okay, so more on the not necessarily commercial side of things, but the business to business referrals and repeat business comes through you through those professional networks like Better Business Bureau, Chamber of Commerce, BNI, Toastmasters, the more professional type networks. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not suggesting that is a bigger, better way than any other, but it is one way. Now, if that is your pathway, why do you need to know about for sale by owners? Right, which is another avenue to build your business. Right, so it's those types of priorities that I would think is quite key early on to establish as to, okay, how am I going to identify myself? How am I going to, not just for myself, but also for the marketplace, but most importantly for yourself, so that I can set my standards, that I can build the actions, the plans, and achieve the results that I'm looking for. And they are much more gauged, measured, in sync and in line with what my objectives are. Okay. So that's why This may actually seems like a bit of an overstatement at this point in time, but it is actually a really important reminder, because otherwise you'll find yourself looking at all of this stuff, and I mean all of this stuff that is going to run at you at this point in time in your career, and you're going to go like, "What the heck did I get myself into?" There's so much I can't process it all, and you won't be able to, right? Until you're able to say, "Not important right now." And you're going to say it more often than not. And even though everybody else around you is going to say, yeah, but, right? You need to do this or you're required to do that. And it's your business. It's your business. Okay. Own it. And at some level, unless it is an absolutely regulatory requirement, at some point in time, you need to be able to say, okay, is this really the best use of my time right now? Is this the most important thing to do right now in my business? And if the answer is yes, then go with it. I'm not suggesting that you break the rules. No, not at all. Far from it. But there are priorities, and then there are things that are just kind of important, but they're not actually important for you. They're important for somebody else, right? So think about that. All right. So then we're also going to talk about what it actually means to be an agent, establish your professional foundation, and build your first operating systems. Okay. Hope that helps you a little bit. Not being a student, and this is actually kind of it's a little bit of a misunderstanding, as a matter of fact. Don't get me wrong, you're never stop being a student. You're always going to be learning new stuff almost every day. But the perspective changes from being a student in order to pass the license to being a student of the stuff that you need to implement today, tomorrow, the day after. You don't need to be a student to, learn something for 5 years from now, right? Unless you go back into recertification or you're going for higher degrees of licensing. I don't know, whether you want to become a managing broker or you want to do something in development and you want an appraisal certification or urban land economics. That's a whole different level of education. But from this moment forward, I'm going to encourage you to think about education as an action-focused objective, right? So meaning I need to learn this because I need it over here, right? I want to expand on the talk about, business to business networking. Okay, I want to develop a business to business networking. Okay, who are my best targets? Well, that would be something to learn and to research. Learn that, right? Versus, I don't know, how do I write an ad for social media? If that's not where your business is going to come from, why do you need to know that? Right? It's just a matter of action focused. Is it I'm a student and I will always be learning, but is it the key thing to learn right now? And in many cases, it won't be. Okay. You're a licensed advisor, and this is very often we hear, particularly new real estate agents, say, "I don't know anything, so how can I possibly be an advisor?" Well, that kind of goes back to what we said earlier. Lawyers are not necessarily experts on all aspects of the law. They'll have their own niche, their own pocket, their own speciality, and so do realtors. So if you get a question about a topic that you don't know about, that's an opportunity to, A, for you to dive into it and learn more, and B, to build that relationship with the person asking the question, because obviously there's a need. And if you can guide and direct them and in the process learn a lot yourself, then yes, you are that licensed advisor. Absolutely. There's no harm in learning on the go. In fact, it's the recommended way. And I can tell a little story here. My own start in real estate was well before I was ever licensed. In fact, about a year, almost a year and a half. I attended one of these quick rich seminar programs. You too can be millionaire with no money down and all that stuff, all this hype. And I thought, well, I mean, I was kind of in a holding pattern. So I went to one of these things and got involved with the alumni and sold some books, and we did some presentations, and we gathered some people that attended these programs and try to walk and talk them through some of the learnings and whatever. And during one of those sessions, two Japanese gentlemen walked up to us and asked us whether or not we could help them finding some apartment buildings. And we went like, yeah, sure, we could. And an associate and myself ended up working with these people for about a year before they actually ended up buying two apartment buildings in the West End of Vancouver. This is, in 1986, 87. And it wasn't licensed at the time. So we did clear it with then what was then called the Real Estate Council of British Columbia, is now called BCFSA, and got a letter from the people that hired us to do the research, and that we were in fact employed under contract with them. So we weren't actually agents; we were contracted consultants. And at that point in time, we became their advisors. Right? Now, we weren't at the time licensed, and we didn't need to be licensed, but we definitely were hired to provide information. And frankly, we were providing information and gathering information on stuff that we knew nothing about. Right? So that made it that much extra important for us to research everything that we did, and we did. Right? We there was days that we went through 500-600 pages worth of research material, and then analysis and evaluations and comparables and zoning and you name it, right? So we, in a very short period of time, actually did become experts, but on purpose, right? There was a very distinct, very narrow field of expertise that we needed to know a lot about in a very short period of time. And I can honestly tell you that within 3 months, we knew more about that niche, the apartment buildings in the West End of Vancouver, than 95 to maybe 99% of all the realtors in that whole area. There was maybe one or two realtors that were truly specialists in that field that knew more, and we worked with them. We worked with them. So they became, to some degree, our trainers, our educators, our resources. And it was a bit of a different industry and a different marketplace at that point in time. But we very much collaborated, and they gained and we gained from that collaboration to a large degree. And so did the investors. Because I can honestly say those investors ended up buying two apartment buildings that at the time were sold. I think one was $4 million, the other one was $8 million, which was at the time a very high price. And people at the time said, wow, that will set a new standard. And of course, now you couldn't buy those buildings for 3 times the price each. Right? So they were, in fact, really good deals, but the Canadian marketplace hadn't recognized that Vancouver at the time was very much a global opportunity. And the global marketplace recognized it. The Canadian marketplace didn't, but the global marketplace very much did. So anyway, that's it, just to give you a bit of understanding as to that focus, right? That drive towards being a specialist, being an expert, being identified as one thing. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing for you because you can focus on one thing to learn and to implement all of your business models and activities around that. Okay? And yes, you will very much operate under that one purpose type understanding. So everything you do will flow from who you believe you are. You are. Right? So that self-identification becomes a really important part. And, you know, there's so many realtors with their own personalities that it should not come as a surprise that we say this. Yet there is so many people that, including many real estate agents, that kind of want to blend in with everybody else. Well, then tell me, please, why would a buyer hire you? Why would a seller hire you if you are just one of the other 26,000, which is about the number of real estate agents in British Columbia as we speak? This is, what are we, January 2026, right? So finding your identity, not only for your own sake, but also for marketing, branding, and positioning yourself, is an important piece. Now, your personal identity is important also for your own mental health, I would say, because if you start pretending to be something that you're not, how long are you going to be able to do that without running, into all kinds of personal and emotional, psychological problems with yourself? So it's that's a whole other field where that really is somewhat beyond the scope of any of that we're talking about here, but it is something to consider. And again, if you wanted to work with people that you know, like, and trust already, why would you force yourself to do something else, right? So if your sphere, your natural tendency is to associate with a certain type of people, a certain type of businesses, a certain type of organizations, certain type of properties, then follow that. Right? It's one of the other reasons why we talk so much about the superpower, because that what you already are outstanding in will make you stand out in real estate as well. Okay. So is that a hobby? Is that a sport? Is that a previous career? Is it something that you can bridge between this passion and real estate so that the two are connected on a deeper level, right? One of my favorite questions that I have asked and continue to ask many people when I first talk to them, if I could make you financially independent in the next 5 years, would that be worth a conversation or a cup of coffee, right? And because I have worked with many people on that semi-financial gain investor type perspective, that oftentimes is a starting point of a very extensive conversation about what people's dreams are for their finances and how they see that and how they view that. And a lot of people have that misconception that you have to have millions of dollars in the bank in order to be financially independent. It's not at all true. Not at all true. You just need steady cash flow that is higher than your expenses. That's it. Well, that sounds a whole lot easier, doesn't it? Steady cash flow, independent from your working, that is higher than your day-to-day expenses, then you're financially independent. Now, yes, there's a bit more to it, but anyway. So your identity, right? Very important. When you become what you want to be, if you internalize, if you create that identity, it changes your behavior. It changes your approach to communication and dialogue. So again, that makes it so much easier for you to kind of be true to yourself. And therefore you can act much more professional, much more authentic, right? Whereas, people that need to force it, they end up oftentimes having to kind of, as they say, fake it. And there is this old saying that used to say, fake it till you make it. Well, I'm not really a big believer in that one. But some people can actually become more entrenched into something that they're not necessarily feeling good about. Okay. So, and yes, rookies absolutely rise to the top by choosing an identity early. I remember here in Victoria, a couple of realtors, one actually fairly recently in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and one about 15, 20 years ago. And similar personalities, entirely different approach. But, very distinct personalities in their own right, being able to set themselves apart by following their personal approach to the business in, like I said, completely different ways, but very recognizable nevertheless, in the sense that they had very much carved out, this is how I'm going to do it, this is who I'm going to be, and what I'm going to represent like, and they followed their own values and beliefs and understanding, and succeeded both at very high levels in a relatively short period of time. I mean, I would say in the first year or so, it was very clear that they were going to succeed at very high levels, because of how they picked to present themselves to work. Okay. Now, in the word book, you're going to find an exercise that says establish your agent identity. It's your own personal alignment. Okay. And it's an important exercise. I'll touch on it in a moment, a little bit more. But as a professional realtor identity, right? One of the things that you do, that a lot of people think that you're actually in the real estate business, but you're not. Okay? Real estate doesn't need to be sold; it sells itself. I mean, it's very rare where you have to actually tell a buyer that, oh, this is by far the best property for you. And no, the buyers can come up with that all by themselves. They'll see it, they'll walk into it, they go like, oh, wow. Right? And then it's almost like you have to unsell it if there's something distinctly wrong with it. And even then you sometimes have to kind of then resort to the facts and the data to make sure that you support everything appropriately. So your job is to actually help people through the transitions in their lives, and in short terms, that is oftentimes you solve problems, right? Challenges, resolve issues, right? And some of them are positive, right? People getting married, new job, promotions, more income, yada yada yada, babies, all of the positive things in life. You're certainly part of that, and that's they're are there problems? No, there are opportunities, there are challenges, but there's a positive excitement too. But you also deal with the downside of life, right? The financial disasters, being laid off, foreclosure, bankruptcy, divorce, separation, death, health challenges, aging, conflict, right? In general. So all of those are also very, very key reasons why people buy and sell real estate. And we are kind of the conduit. We're the facilitator of that, making that all happen as smoothly and as practical and sometimes as profitable as possible, right? So again, that whole property sale or purchase almost becomes an afterthought in that process. It's really, the outcome is, I need this issue resolved, whatever that issue is, whatever it is, we need to move to a lifestyle status that represents who we are and where we are in our place in society. Or sometimes it's a death in the family, or sometimes it's a divorce, or sometimes there's some really terrible things that have happened in people's lives that they need to either go away from something or towards some resolution. Okay. And helping people through that is a very, very important task. That's in fact why they hire us. Right? The property, yes, there is some practical sides to it, but it's not that complicated that we need to be adding dramatic emphasis on it. It's really all the other stuff that we can make a dramatic difference about. Okay. So because of that, you interpret the data, you guide the decisions, you manage some risk. Why? Because that's our role. We have a fiduciary role to help our clients, to support our clients, to take on that duty to protect them and hold them, safeguarded from all the risks that are out there. So it's a pretty significant role, and a lot of people are not quite in sync with that until they actually start working with people on an ongoing basis. So, identity statement. Say it until you embody it. I'm a professional who leads clients with clarity, strategy, and care. So, not a bad baseline. But again, in the manual, in the workshop manual, there is a more pronounced exercise for you. You can play with it and tinker with it and make your own statement. And it's a good thing to spend a little bit of time on it, to the point that you honestly subscribe to it, that it becomes your identity, right? Again, this is not about me trying to tell you what to say, how to say it. No, you coming to yourself realization that this is what I am. This is who I want to be. Okay. And this is where this fake it till you make it kind of statement sometimes comes from. It's not entirely the same thing, but confidence definitely comes from competence. So you repeating things, you practicing things, you learning things, in actually applying the skills that you acquire. One of the things that I say to many, many newer agents is do a market study once a week and every week. Not for some of your career, but for all of your career. Why? Because it keeps you sharp. It keeps you in the moment, in the marketplace. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that it's the same market study on the same neighborhood. No. Mix it up every week, a little slightly different approach, a different area, different type of property, different price range, so that you have the nuances between each and every one of them, and you can rattle it off as you have conversations, and that will very much improve your confidence in the marketplace. Right? You'll know exactly what's going on. And you'll be able to say, "Oh yeah, no, I appreciate that you talk about this property over there. Yeah, I previewed that, and it has this and that, or whatever. However, you're comparing with this one, but that's really not a really good comparable because of this, that, or whatever." And you'll have a nuanced and detailed and very good interpretive set of guidance that will help the consumer in establishing what is right, wrong, and indifferent for them. Okay. And it's a process. You make that decision how you represent yourself and how professional you become with that. Okay. So you have your identity statement. Then do some strength mapping. And that, again, there's an exercise in your book about that. Okay. And then you kind of start setting your entire rookie mindset in a way that allows you to represent yourself. So what that means is you start changing the language on your brochures, your business cards, your flyers, your scripts and dialogues in your conversations and in your presentations, because it becomes more and more consistent with your identity and who you represent and how you represent yourself. And the point of this is because you're now you're carving out, you're really honing into what future you are building, right? Because changing directions and saying, "Oh, well, I liked green last week, but this week I'm purple," or next month I'll be chasing expired listings, or a week from now I'm going to do for sale by owners. First and foremost, you are lost then. More importantly, the marketplace will lose complete intel and insight into who you are and what you are and how you want to be dealt with. And it's very hard to do that and correct that. Okay. I've met many real estate agents that for for their entire career, they're chasing the business rather than the business chasing them. And why are they chasing the business? Because they've never put themselves together as an identity that people could relate to, right? Again, my silly question, if I can show you without a shadow of a doubt that I can make you financially independent in the next 5 years, would that be worth a cup of coffee? Now, for some people, they're not interested in that. Fine. But they know exactly what I'm about. So if they are interested in financial independence, okay, then they're going to say something. You get my point? It's very easy to identify. I will use that line for, I don't know, as long as I've been in real estate. Okay. And it came out of a need. The need was that I needed to build my own financial independence. And, I didn't know enough people. So I needed a hook, right? A way to attract people to me, even though they didn't know me. So what was my hook? Well, my hook was the ability to create financial independence for people. And again, it's not hard. It's just a matter of putting the programs in motion. Okay. So why are you in this business, right? Again, this goes back to our business plan. And again, if you haven't done one, please go get a copy from us. We have a fairly extensive manual for you that you can use and fill in the blanks literally. Or if you want to create your own, use our manual as a bit of a topical guide, so to speak, and then fill in your blanks yourself, right? So what's your personal why? How big is that? Your life goals, right? And then your client why, as in what type of clients do you want to serve and why? Right? And what is your standard of excellence? What will make you go and say, that's how I represent myself. That's how I provide service. And sometimes I'm a bit of a fanatic on these things. And my wife sometimes slaps me around a little bit and says, what the heck are you doing? Anyway, if you go into a store, right, and it's a retail store and they're very dependent upon how a consumer feels when they're in the store. And the first thing that you hear is, how can I help you? And my natural response is by staying out of my way. Because I'm not here to be sold something. I don't know what you have in many cases, particularly if you're just casually walking into a store. Now, if I walk up to a counter and say, and clearly are seeking somebody to get help with, then yeah, if I then have to wait 20 minutes for somebody to show up, I'm also annoyed, right? So customer service is a very important part of what we do. Now, who's the customer? Right? Well, you have suspects, you have prospects, you've got leads, and you have clients and customers. So clients and customers are the people that have committed to you, and you have committed to them. Everybody else is a prospect or a lead or a suspect. So that's another kind of assessment and self-evaluation to establish in your whole business model, who do you want to work with and who are you going to commit to, and to the degree that it actually becomes proper and professional, right? If you give the same time and attention and value to somebody that is not committing to you compared to the people that commit to you, I'm suggesting to you that the people that actually commit to you do not get, therefore, better value, better representation. You're not actually doing anything special for them, and you ought to, right? And frankly, this is where agency relationships can actually help you establish that more professional type of relationship. I don't mean for a moment that you be rude, obnoxious, and nasty to people that are not clients. Not at all. But there is a difference. Okay, and I need you to think about that. Right? These are important parts. All right. If your why doesn't move you, it won't move you into action. So again, an important question to ask yourself, right? Have you really come up with a big why that is big enough for you to actually go and say, yes, I'm willing to do what it takes to get there. I'm going to do these things to get to where my why is taking me. Okay. Real estate is just a tool. It's just a vehicle to get there, right? So that's why it's so important to pick very meaningful whys, reasons, right? What is worth fighting for? Okay, so again, there is a number of exercises about this in the workbook. We have touched on many of these things. If you've taken our aspiring agent session and or almost agent sessions, then you know that this is a very big deal. And for many of the rookie agents that have not taken those classes, I urge you to do this business plan. It is of key importance, and big why is a big deal of that. The other part of that is what I refer to the superpower. Okay, and so the big why we've kind of touched on a little bit. The superpower is not really touched on much in this particular manual, but I'll touch on it here for a moment. And I'll illustrate it with a story, and it's a story told to me by the founder of the company that I'm actually with right now. He was doing a consultation with some agents, and we were all standing around, and an agent was asking him, how do I set myself apart in the marketplace? I feel like I'm just one of so many, and nobody cares, right? They don't want to necessarily connect with me because they don't know who I'm at, and what's my identity and all that kind of stuff. And he kind of caught on to all of this. And the founder of the company said very smart, he said, well, if real estate was not for you, or if you had so much money made and you didn't have to work for money anymore, what would you be spending time on? And the agent went like, well, I'm not quite sure where you're going with this, but my passion, right? If I had absolute freedom of choice, my passion would be to be a chef cook again. And the founder was saying, well, what do you mean by again? Well, he said, well, I was a chef cook, but I can't be a chef cook anymore because I have allergies for the chemicals that they use in commercial kitchens and yada, yada, yada. And but that's what I would do. So the founder said, well, so just imagine that if you were able to somehow do something with your passion, how would you connect it to real estate? How could you do something with your passion for cooking and bring it into your real estate profession? And the agent said, well, I don't know. I got to think about it. So 2 weeks later, the founder of the company and this agent reconnected with each other. And it was maybe it was even 3 weeks. But anyways, he had the opportunity to think about it and put something in place. And what he had put in place was that he's now approaching his open houses, not as open houses anymore, but as cooking events. And he'd done it, over a period of 2 weekends, two open houses per weekend. So he'd done 4 open houses. He said the traffic had gone from so-so to insane. Because now what he was doing, he was promoting right? This open house and basically cooking event at the same time, and we would go to this open house. You would an hour early. You would make some appetizers, and the people would get the aromas and the smells, and they would eat. Have some teasers and tasters. They wouldn't want to leave. Right? He brought in hosts to tour the people through the open houses, and people were giving them names and addresses left, right, and center to do an open house on their property. Right. So all of a sudden, he became a notoriety, a person of high interest and high value because he brought something to the real estate practice that was just a little different, but really hit on that emotional side of, hey, you got to fall in love with the home, with the environment, and it's a living thing, right? And so the sights of all the food and the smells and the aroma and getting people to slow down and sit down rather than run and chase themselves through these houses to get through and reject something as fast as possible. He forced them to actually slow down, right? And to really take it in and start, having a little bite and a little drinky and then, walk out to the deck and actually enjoying the ambience, right? And very quickly, this agent has now become a very big deal in his community. So that's how if you're able to connect your superpower, that what you're talented with, whether it's a hobby, a passion, an interest, a community group or a charity or a church or something cultural or artistic, or doesn't really matter. Okay. If you can somehow connect that superpower into real estate and connect it in such a level that you can reach your target audience because of it, good for you. Right? And that will really set yourself up for high results. Okay. It's, again, one of these standards, one of these values that you can incorporate. Hope that makes some sort of sense. So some of the standards, right? You got to work. There's no opportunity, no shortage of working. So I'm going to caution you to not get too caught up with learning too much too far in ahead. So some of the key things that you need to actually do is connect with people. Now, call it lead generation, call it reconnecting, call it top of mind awareness, sphere of influence. You have to get in touch with people, preferably the people that you already know, like, and trust, and make them aware of your new direction in life. Don't necessarily ask them for business right away, but ask them whether you have their permission to stay in touch with you, right? By way of a newsletter, by way of market updates, by way, whatever, right? Now, if you did 5 people a day, 5 days a week, and then wrote those 5 people a follow-up note and said, hey, thanks for talking to me. Here's some information of the stuff that we talked about. I'll touch base with you soon. And then you follow up a week later and a week later and a week later. Then over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, you'll have a pretty good understanding where that relation is at. And they will have a good understanding that you are now a real estate professional, right? So you want to create this top of mind awareness, and then you want to take it one step further. That is top of preference, right? If you become the top preference in the mind of the people that you know, like, and trust, then you have gained, an incredible, prestigious and hard to achieve position in people's lives. Let me put it to you this way. If you, in your entire sphere of influence, if you have 10 people that choose you as the top of priority, that you are their absolute go-to person in real estate, and they each give you 2 or 3 referrals a year, there's not a whole lot more prospects that you need. You understand? Right? Because you're doing 30 to 50 deals a year at that level. That's pretty good production. So becoming that top of preference is an honor position, and it comes by the giver's gain approach, right? If you add value to their life, they very much will reciprocate. That's a natural tendency with people. Okay. Initially, that comes from lead generation. Then it becomes from intentionally adding value to people's lives. Okay. And that's a transition. And we'll talk a lot more about that. Okay. This is kind of a very good reminder as to how to best schedule your day. And it's very simplistic. But time blocking, because we all have a problem with time. Every single one of us in real estate have a problem with time. There is never enough of it. Okay. So time blocking becomes a really important piece. So in the mornings, you go for revenue, i.e., that's lead generation, follow up. In the afternoon is service being showings, listing presentations, appointments that lead to basically the actual business. And then in the evening, if you do evenings, you do reviews and prepare and do presentations. Oftentimes, the evenings is where a lot of negotiations take place, inevitably. It's not a must do, but it depends a little bit on how you structure your business. But that's a very simplistic but efficient and effective way of working your days, particularly if you do this consistently. Okay. So again, in your workbook, you're going to find that there is, this need to do time blocking and do that exercise in the manual, in the guide, and it will start setting yourself into a routine. And I don't want to call ourselves machines, but regularly scheduled activities really form habits. Habits form competence and confidence, and the results will follow from that. Okay. This I think it was Brian Tracy at one point in time did this exercise that, okay, I had this group of people that we've given him, some clay, and he said, go and make a perfect bowl, right? But you can only create one. Okay. So the first one has to be perfect. And then he said to another group, he said, okay, I want you to make as many bowls as you want. And you've got, you got 24 hours to do it, both groups, and show me your results. And who made the best bowl, right? The group that was really focused on creating one perfect bowl, or the other group who was focused on making as many bowls as possible. And of course, without question, the group that made as many bowls as possible also created the best bowl. Why? Because they implemented what they were thinking of and very quickly became masters in what they were doing. Okay, so that's how time blocking works. And if you just kind of rinse, repeat, you become better and better and better at things. Okay, that doesn't mean that you deliberately start making mistakes initially. No, that's not what I mean. Okay. But what clients need is a guide. They need a counselor, an advisor, somebody that they know, like, and trust. And the trust is a big deal, right? Particularly in today's society where trust has become, really something anticlimactic. We're constantly disappointed by those that we're supposed to trust. So you being true to your identity, to your integrity, to your values is an important piece of that, of course, right? So part of that role is to identify challenges, right? Hear what I just said. Identify challenges. That's almost anti-sales statement, right? We're supposed to overcome challenges. Right? Now, it's actually important that you bring them out. Right? Then simplify decisions and provide direction. So, making your clients fully aware of what is going on and how things are happening is an important part of all of that. Okay. So what clients really want is certainty. They want clarity. They want informed processes where they have been given full and complete access to all of the information that is important to them. Anybody trying to hide anything from it always backfires. It always backfires. And it causes a lot of problems. So tell them what's happening, tell them what it means, and tell them what to do next. This is not rocket science. Okay. And oh, by the way, yeah, forget that. It's not about you. It never was about you. And 38 years later, it's still not about me. Okay, it's okay. We are there to help them to go wherever it is that they want to go. Right? It's their goals, their stress, their timeline, not yours. Can't manhandle that. Okay. Best people in the world can't do that. Okay. So we're going to give you all kinds of activities, all kinds of missions. We're going to talk about, like I said, your identity, your intel. What do you need? The systems, right? What kind of system? What kind of processes? The lead generation, the connecting with people, and then the mastery around working with buyers and sellers. And there's a sequence here, right? So the intel is important and the systems are important, but the systems are important once you have figured out the intel and the identity. That the systems will then be held accountable to generate leads. Right? Then with the leads, you're going to eventually flush out buyers and sellers. See how it works? There's no point in you becoming a master with buyers and sellers until the other bits are properly in place. Okay, it's important that you understand the sequence here. So here is how we work these things. Okay, we're going to teach you some stuff. You're going to apply it. You're going to look at it, right, and say, "There's a better way of doing it," and then you're going to do it again, and then you're going to review it and improve it. Do it again. Okay. So that's how we do things. That's how the manual set up. This is how the videos are set up. And we're going to have a debrief, and of course, from time to time. So in your first 30 days, we're really going to build that rhythm, right? You build the confidence, the consistency. We're going to put, you're somewhat under some strain and some pressure. That's not to be mean or miserable. It's just we want you to start building these habits, to build the confidence, to do things the way it needs to be done. Right? Truly, honestly, real estate opportunities are everywhere. And I mean everywhere. If you have something to offer, people want to hear. People want to learn. Right? So ask questions, listen intently, and stay curious. Right? And there's much to be said about that, but we'll deal with that later. Protocol 2, communication, clear, concise, confident. Speak in simple terms. Avoid jargon. Don't get into abbreviations or acronyms or fancy dancy real estate jargon. No. And validate concerns. So you're concerned about this. What is that? How does that make you feel? What does that mean to you? And get their understanding in your mind. Don't make assumptions. If it's not in your contact management system, it doesn't exist. Your CRM becomes your second brain. Okay. Very important part. Excuse me. Is that as soon as you have an interaction with somebody, that person needs to get into your contact management. Add note, add task, and set up a follow-up schedule. The sooner, the better you do that. the more repeat business you will get. The number one mistake is overlearning. Just one thing, apply, see what happens. Then you learn the next path. You don't have to hide behind training. You don't have to say, well, I'll do that if and when. Nah, just do it. Yeah. Build some caution. Be careful, but just get on with it. Okay. Your skills will grow. There's no question. Your skills will grow. Okay. No schedule. Yeah. If you don't schedule, it won't get done. So plan tomorrow today. Honor your appointments with yourself. So one of the exercises, whether it's in this week or in one of the future weeks, is create a perfect week. Create a perfect week. Right? What do you do in the morning? What do you do Monday morning at 9 o'clock? If it's not booked, scheduled, it just won't get done. Okay. And so on and so forth. A week follow-up program. Most rookies don't need more leads. They need more follow-up. Okay. The money truly is in the follow-up. I hear so many agents, I don't have enough leads. Well, how many leads did you get? 5. How many did you follow up with? None. They're all useless. How do you know? You never followed up with them. How do you know that they're useless? Well, they weren't instant buyers. Well, the incubation time of the average real estate buyer or seller is 9 months. How can you possibly determine after one interaction whether somebody is ready, willing, and able to buy or sell? Okay? Doesn't work that way. Not in real estate. It may work at 7-Eleven, and even there, it's doubtful. Okay? The point of this type of industry, it's all about relationships, trust, confidence. And is there an actual need, right? And the need may not be now. And even if it does exist now, it may not be urgent now, or it may not be possible now, right? So be early, be consistent, be valuable, add value, keep adding value. Okay. Go back to that exercise. Do your identity. Who are you? How do you show up? What do you promise clients? So what is your value proposition, right? Build your why, as in your personal why, your client why, and a professional why, right? They're all important. They can be connected. They can be similar. I didn't say it has to be diabolically different between the three, but they are all three quite important. Okay. What's your 7-day command center? Schedule. Sorry. What do you do for lead generation? What do you do for follow-up? What do you do for learning? And where does your personal life fit in here? Right. And again, put it in the workbook. Right. So these are your missions for this week. Right. This is your mission. Is to get clear. Right. Get your identity sorted out. Set your standards. Create your why, and create a schedule. That's your mission. That's a big mission, actually. Okay. If you do this well, this will help you tremendously throughout the rest of the program on many levels, right? Because you can then constantly go back to it. Is this consistent with? Am I on track? It's a huge help. Okay. So, and it's so true. Your future depends on how you show up today. If you build the habits, you take ownership, right? And you understand what all of this is doing. That's exactly what this is all about, right? Is you taking ownership of your future, your career, your business. You can do this. Because none of the stuff that we talked about today is magical, is secretive. It's a little secretive because people underestimate it. They've heard it for years, and it didn't necessarily clue in. And I hope this time around it does clue in, that you do realize and recognize that, hey, if it is up to anybody to accomplish this, it is up to me. And if I drive the bus, if I truly take ownership of this, I can determine my destiny from the word go. So if you caught on to that and you picked up on that and you accept that challenge, that responsibility, good on you. Power to you, and we'll hope to see you next week. And so get on with the first mission, do the work, do the exercise, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week in mission number 2. All right? All the best, and have a fantastic week.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.